Module 1, Section 4, used in the business intelligence development environment. So on this page, we see on page 32, notice in the very top we have the labels BIDS and SSDT. BIDS is the name that we used in SQL Server 2008, SQL Server 2008 R2, and SQL Server 2005. And BIDS stood for Business Intelligence Development Studio. It's essentially the Visual Studio 2008 shell with templates for working with reporting services, analysis services, and integration services. But with the release of SQL Server 2012, Microsoft changed the name from BIDS to SQL Server Data Tools. Same thing. SQL Server Data Tools is nothing more than a collection of templates that integrate with Visual Studio. So if you were using SQL Server 2012, you would have the Visual Studio 2010 shell. The Visual Studio 2010 shell would only have the templates for integration services, reporting services, and analysis services. It wouldn't contain support for any languages. So if you wanted to work with Visual Basic or C# or any .NET languages, you'd have to purchase and install a complete license of Visual Studio. But the Visual Studio shell is just enough of the Visual Studio program to allow you to work with the business intelligence templates for reporting services, integration services, and analysis services. There's also a Visual Studio 2012 and a Visual Studio 2013. Now with Visual Studio 2019, we no longer refer to SQL Server Data Tools. You can if you want to, but Microsoft just uses the term Visual Studio 2019. And the templates are available in Visual Studio 2019, so we no longer use the term SQL Server Data Tools. It's all just integrated in Visual Studio, and to keep it simple, we simply use one term, Visual Studio 2019. If you were using a previous version of SQL Server, you would either launch the Business Intelligence Development Studio. There would be an icon or a command on the Start button, or likewise for SQL Server Data Tools. Regardless of what you launched, BIDS or SSDT, they would both launch Visual Studio. Visual Studio is the actual program that is actually launched. And then from inside Visual Studio, you'd simply choose the option to create a brand new project. And from the list of templates, you would choose what template you wanted. If we're working with reporting services, we can choose the Report Server Project Wizard or the Report Server Project. The difference between the two is the Report Server Project Wizard, should you choose that template, it'll automatically start up a wizard. And if you realize you really don't want to use the wizard, just click on Cancel. Report Server Project doesn't launch the wizard, and you simply build everything from scratch. I never use the Report Server Project Wizard. I'm very familiar with reporting services, and I'm sure that you will become very familiar with reporting services, and you'll probably find that you can build things much quicker the way you want them without having to go through the wizard. The screenshot in front of us is the New Project dialog box. This is what it looked like in Visual Studio 2015 and Visual Studio 2017. So Visual Studio 2015 is what we used in SQL Server 2016, and Visual Studio 2017 is what we used with Visual Studio 2017. So the versions of SQL Server and the versions of Visual Studio, they don't match. Now, SQL Server 2019 and Visual Studio 2019, they happen to match. The numbers happen to match. But in the previous versions of SQL Server and Visual Studio, there was a mismatch of the numbers. But regardless, the interface looked exactly like this. You can see the templates right over here. You can see the business intelligence templates. This is what SQL Server Data Tools would give you. So if you were to download and install SQL Server Data Tools, it would give you these templates: analysis services, integration services, and reporting services. You can see the author has clicked on reporting services, then you can see the templates that are available to us: Report Server Project Wizard and Report Server Project. The screenshot also shows that the user has support for working with the languages Visual, C#. You would choose your template, then you would come down here to where it says name, location, and solution name, and you would give your project a name. You could accept the default location or change the location path, and you can also give it a solution name. If you don't change the name of the solution, it'll automatically use the name of the project. The relationship between projects and solutions is like a parent and child. A solution is made up of one or more projects, and a project is made up of one or more files. If you don't change the solution name, it'll have the same name as the project, and that's going to create folders on the hard drive. When you get comfortable with it, it's not an issue, but if you're initially new to Visual Studio, it might be confusing because you see a folder and then a subfolder with exactly the same name. In Visual Studio 2019, the dialog box looks different for a new project. You can see this is what we have in the previous versions of Visual Studio. This is what it looks like in Visual Studio 2019. So you can see right up here it says create a brand new project. And up here where it says create a brand new project, I type the word report. What that does is it filters the templates that you see here. If I was to type analysis or integration right up there where I have the word report, it would filter what you see here. Since I typed the word report, and I don't have to type the entire thing, the word report was fine, it actually shows me right here, you can see the report server project wizard into the report server project. We can also see that we have integration services import project wizard, and you can scroll up and down, you can see the other templates that are available to you. There's quite a few templates available here. So if I wanted to work with the report server project, I would make sure to click on this one right here and then click on the button called next. When you click on the button called next, it takes you to this other page, and this is where you would specify the project name. You would choose your drive and directory location or accept the default and specify the solution name. Notice how on the previous versions of SQL you choose the template, but you also specify the name, location, and solution name on the same screen. But in Visual Studio 2019, you choose the template on one screen, and then on another screen you specify the project name, location, and solution name. The project templates contain all the objects that you can use to create whatever you want to create, and it is important that you choose the correct template. If you want to work with reporting services, then choose the reporting services template. If you want to work with analysis services, then choose that template. It makes no sense to actually choose an analysis services template if you really wanted to work with reporting services, because you're not going to have the objects that you need. But please be aware that when you create a solution, your solution is made up of one or more projects. So I can create one solution with an integration services project, an analysis services project, and a reporting services project. Or I can create a solution with 3 reporting services projects. How you mix and match your projects inside your solution is entirely up to you. The solution is going to have an extension of SLN. If you open up the solution, then it opens up all the projects inside the solution. And once again, the solution can be made up of a variety of different type of projects. If I wanted to go ahead and create one reporting services project, 4 integration services projects, and 1 analysis services project inside the same solution, I would simply go and interact with this interface that we see here on page 35 that many times. Every time you interact with this environment on page 35 and 36, you're creating one project. You can add multiple projects to an existing solution. I'm going to do a demonstration in just a bit to show you how you work with Visual Studio 2019. The screenshot you see here shows the user working with Visual Studio, and they've chosen to work with a report template. What I want you to take away from the screenshot you see in front of you on page 39 are the different areas. You're always going to have windows that are on the left. I'm pointing to the toolbox. And you're always going to have windows that are on the right. I'm pointing to the Solution Explorer and the Property window. These windows that I'm pointing to all have a collection of icons in the upper right-hand corner. There's always going to be a small toolbar, and you can see very small right there. It says Solution Explorer, Properties, and Toolbox. So on the right-hand side of that small title, are these icons. And one of the icons you see is an X. So I can use the X to dismiss that window. If for some reason I close one of the windows that I want, there's a menu view. You can see here at the top, third menu from the left, File, Edit, View. And on the menu view, you can tell the system to display any window that you want. Visual Studio is nothing more than a collection of different windows we can use. You can always see that sometimes you have multiple windows. I just highlighted an area that shows you 3 different windows. If there's windows that you don't need, you can always point to that tab and then click on the X in the upper right hand corner. You can see right here is another display of multiple windows in a tab display. Half the battle is simply knowing, do I need to look for something on the left, look for something on the right, look for something lower right hand corner, lower left hand corner. You can also see that we have multiple reports open. Each report is going to show up on its own tab, and you can see these tabs that I'm pointing to. Much like Excel workbooks, can have multiple sheets on the bottom of the screen. So you'll see this environment in some of the demonstrations you're going to be working with. This environment that I'm looking at right here, where I'm drawing this red rectangle, this is called the Report Designer. This is the design canvas inside Visual Studio where you do your work. The toolboxes, we can actually drag and drop items onto the canvas. So if you want a table or a matrix or a chart, I can go to the toolbox and I can drag that element onto the report canvas. If the toolbox is not visible, just go to the menu view and turn your toolbox on. The Solution Explorer over here on the right hand side of the screen shows you all the projects inside your solution. And if your reporting services project contains 10 different reports, you'll see 10 different reports. You can barely see it, briefly see it right here. There's a container called Reports, and I can see the different reports. You'll recognize that each report has an extension called RDL. RDL stands for Report Definition Language. As you'll see a little bit later, an RDL file is nothing more than a unique type of XML file. RDL happens to be an XML vocabulary. There's also the auto hide feature. I just talked about the X. If you wanted to use the X, you could go ahead and click on it to dismiss a window. But maybe you want to go ahead and just have the window hide as opposed to be closed. And that's the purpose of this thumbtack. If you point to the thumbtack, right now it's pointing up and down. If you point to it, it'll turn sideways. And as soon as you move your mouse away from that toolbox window, it allows that window to actually slide close. And so now you just see this gray button-like icon on the right or the left. You can point to that gray button-like icon, and when you hover over it with your mouse, the window slides open. If you move your mouse away, then it slides closed. The benefit is you can see how much real estate this window is consuming. It's consuming quite a few inches of screen space. And if you're working with a laptop, quite a few inches of screen space is very important. Now I happen to be sitting in front of 3 25-inch monitors, so I have a lot of screen space to work with. I might want to dedicate more room to my design surface. So using the auto hide feature will give me the opportunity to hide those various windows and dedicate more room to the design surface. Folks, that brings us to the end of section 4. We're going to move on to module 2. And in module 2, we're going to take a look at creating table-based reports. So far we've taken a look at a variety of different things. We talked about the purpose of the reporting services, components, integration services, analysis services, reporting services. So we talked about the 3 things that make up business intelligence. We talked about the 2 databases that hold the reporting services metadata. And we talked about service accounts. We talked about the reporting services web portal, how we create a project inside Visual Studio, and the icons that we can use and the buttons we can use. Before we actually close, I just realized something. I didn't show you how to use Visual Studio and create a solution and a project. So let me do that right now. So let me go to the training machine, and I'm going to launch Visual Studio. So it's this purple infinity symbol. I'll click on it with my mouse. It says Get Started, clone a repository, open a project or solution, open a local folder, create a brand new project. I can also choose this Continue Without Code, and I'll just click on it and see what it does. and it takes me here to this interface right here. And I'm not concerned with the updates. You can see the Solution Explorer on the right. We can see some windows that are auto-closed. There's the Server Explorer. I don't need it, so I'll close it. There's my toolbox. I'll click on the thumbtack to make sure that it's permanently displayed. If I go to this tabbed window here, this is what Get Changes. I don't need it. So I'll click on the X. So how do we get started? Well, let's just go to the menu File and choose New Project. And we can see that we have all the templates here. If I don't see the template that I want here, there's Analysis Services Tabular. There's things that I recognize. It's going to come right up here. It says Search for Templates. And I'll just type the word Report. And I can see Report Server Project Wizard and Report Server Project. So I'll choose that. It's the template that I want. And I'll click Next. I'm going to go ahead and type in Module 2. And then for the solution name, I don't want to create a directory called Module 2 with a subdirectory called Module 2. For the solution name, I'm just going to call it Northwind, named after the company. And so in Module 2, I'll have whatever I want to create in Module 2. And then I'll have those inside a solution called Northwind. And this is the directory where it's going to be created. It's inside my student profile in the subdirectory called Source Repos. I'll just click Create, and there we are. I'd like to go ahead and add a brand new solution to this project. But notice the folders that we have. For a reporting services project, we have shared data sources and shared data sets, and we have reports. I'm going to go to the menu File, and I'll do a new project. And I'll simply type the word Report. And I'll choose Report Server Project, and click Next, and I'll do it again. I'm just going to type Module 3. But I don't want to create a brand new solution. I want to use an existing solution. And the solution that I want to use is currently open. You can see it right here. I'm pointing to it with a red arrow. It says Northwind. So we're going to add Module 3 to the existing solution. I'll just click on Create. Another way to do that is to simply go to the solution, Northwind, right-click on it, and we can choose Add New Project. And I'll simply come up here and type Report. And I'll choose Report Server Project, and I'll simply choose Next. And click on Create. I'm going to go ahead and go back to Solution, for it says Northwind, and I'm going to add a brand new project. And this time I'm going to type IN for Integration Services, INT, and I'm looking for Integration Services Project. So I'm going to add an Integration Services Project to this particular solution. And the name that I'm just going to use for it is SSIS, short for SQL Server Integration Services. And you can see that I have Module 2, Module 3, and for some reason I forgot to name this particular project. So I'll just right-click on it, and I'll just use Rename, and I'll just call it Module 4. So I have 3 different projects for reporting services, and I'll collapse them. You can see this is an Integration Services project, and the folders look different. I'm going to add one more by just right-clicking, and I'll choose New Project, and this is going to be Analysis Services. I'll just type the letters AN. And there's Analysis Services Multidimensional and Data Mining Project, and that's what I want. We also have the ability to support an Analysis Services Tabular project if we scroll down, but I don't want a tabular project. What I want is an Analysis Services Multidimensional Data Mining Project. So I'll choose that, and I'll click Next, and I'm just going to go ahead and call it AdventureWorks after the name of the database that I'll be using. We're going to put it inside the same solution. We'll click on Create. And now you can see that I have a solution called Northwind with a project called AdventureWorks, which is using the multidimensional data model template. And then I have Module 2, 3, and 4, which are using the reporting services template. And then I have SSIS, which is using the integration services template. And I'll save my changes by going to the menu File and choosing Save All. And I'll close Visual Studio. If I go to my file system, and I go to my C drive, and I go to Users, this is the account that I'm using, Administrator Student. Then I'll go to Source, and I'll go to Repos, and there's my solution folder. And inside it is a solution file. If I open up that solution file, all of these projects open. I can also just return to Visual Studio, and I can see right here that I most recently used this solution. So I'll click on it. It opens up Visual Studio. You can see my projects are available to me. I really don't need this integration services package file, so I'll close it. We're going to be working with Module 2. I really don't want these other projects that I see, so I'm just going to get rid of them. I created them, so you can see how to do that. But I'm just going to right click and I'm going to choose Remove. They're just being removed from the screen. They're not actually being deleted from the hard drive. If I really wanted to delete them from the hard drive, I could. The reason why you might want to remove them is because you might want to later add them. You can see that I can go to the solution and I can later choose Add Existing Solution or Existing Project. That's what I meant to say. Existing Project. And I can just navigate to the solution Northwind or wherever they're located, and I'll choose AdventureWorks, and you can see that I can re-add that project. And so there's the AdventureWorks project. It was re-added. But I really don't want it, so I'll remove it for now. And I'm going to go to my folder and go to my C drive, and I'm going to go to Users and Administrator Student, and go to Source and go to Repls, and I'm just going to get rid of that, and that. And for Module 2, I'm just going to give it a different name. Module 2 is fine. We'll leave it as Module 2. And that's where we're going to go ahead and stop this video, and we'll move on to the next module. And the next module is going to be Module 2. We're going to talk about creating table-based reports. So I'll see you in the next module.